Well, hey everybody, welcome back to our series on some of the key aspects of what it looks like to follow after Jesus, the life of a disciple. Today we're going to be talking about the idea of service. You know, as a church, here's what we believe. We believe that Jesus calls each of us to serve other believers and help them follow him. LBC encourages every member to use the unique abilities God has given them to serve other believers. Some will do this through organized ministries, and others by taking personal initiative. I have a very vivid memory of a beautiful statue that sits in kind of a quiet corner of the campus of Dallas Seminary. There are these wooden benches that sit kind of around this statue, and it's a nice, quiet place to go and think. It's really a neat statue. It's a statue of Jesus, and it's kind of a peculiar statue. Jesus is kneeling, and he's taken off his robe. He's got a towel in his hand, and he's looking very intently at what's in front of him. What's in front of him? Well, he's actually kneeling before Peter. And there's this look of shock, almost disbelief in Peter's eyes as he sees what Jesus is doing. He can't believe it. Jesus is actually on his knees with a towel, washing Peter's feet, washing off the dirt and the grime and the smell. It's a beautiful statue because it is portraying a beautiful moment in history. When you think about it, this moment in history is really pretty stunning. Here you have God the Son, and you find him taking on the role of a servant, of all things, a servant. This is amazing. This is exactly who Jesus is. He comes as a servant, a suffering servant, and yet here he is. What makes it so stunning is that it's Jesus. He's God, as in by whom all things are created, God. But that's how he came. He came like a servant. Philippians 2 says that he emptied himself, taking the form of what? A bondservant. That's really amazing. Jesus had that humility to empty himself. He didn't empty himself of divinity. It's not that he was like 90% God. No, that's not the idea. He emptied himself of glory. And you really get a sense for that. As people on earth, as they looked at Jesus, they didn't see someone with all the glory of heaven. They thought they just saw another guy. Jesus emptied himself of glory, and he took on the form of, what's interesting, a servant. You know, in this series, as we're talking about the life of a disciple, and we're kind of asking this question, what does it mean for us as a church here at LBC? What does it mean for us to try to be like Jesus? Well, we can't escape the fact that if you want to be like Jesus, you too have to take on the form of a servant. Listen, in fact, to what Jesus said to his disciples just after the scene where he washes their feet. He says this, "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." See, here's what Jesus is doing. He's saying, you want to be a disciple of mine? You want to try to emulate me? Well, let me set you an example. What you need to do is you need to serve other believers. So Jesus set us an example. And so as a church, as we just think about what does it mean to follow after Jesus in the context of a local church, a local body of Christians, here's what we believe. We believe that it's important for us to serve just like Jesus did, as he set the example of how we serve other believers. Now, Christians, absolutely, we have a role in reaching and serving those who don't know Christ, serving and reaching unbelievers. We'll talk about that more as we get to the outreach circle. But this circle of service, we're just trying to get at a different idea. We're just trying to get at what Jesus is talking about when he talked to his disciples in John 13, as he said, I'm setting you this example, and you are to serve one another. So that's what we're talking about as we talk about this idea of service. Now, when we talk about service, we really have to start by talking about spiritual gifts. Man, that's such an important thing, this idea that when God designed the church, what he did is that he gave each Christian a unique gift, a special gift or ability, and he gave them that gift so that they would serve other Christians within their local church. There's a verse that really describes this very well. It's 1 Peter 4:10. Listen to what it says. As each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. There's a couple of things to notice about this verse, a couple of things we can learn. Number one is this. We learned that each Christian has received a special gift. God, when someone becomes a Christian, God gives them a spiritual gift. Now, what do we mean? What kind of gift does God give to a Christian when they're saved? Well, you can read the different gifts in the Bible. You can go to 1 Corinthians 12 or to Romans 12 and read through the list of the different gifts that God gives. You find things like God gives the ability for certain Christians to be able to teach, or he gives the gifts of leading or giving, maybe an attitude of generosity. God gives the gift of mercy, the desire to show mercy. And what Peter is saying in this verse is that since God has given each one of you as Christians a special, unique gift, you have an obligation. You have an obligation to use that gift to serve other believers. That's such an important idea. Since God has gifted us with different abilities, it would be wrong for us to say, you know what, I don't need to serve the church with these abilities. There's enough going on there. I don't necessarily need the things that other Christians can offer me, and other Christians don't really need the things that I have to offer. Boy, that is just a misguided way of thinking about it, because as God designed the church, he gave us Christians different gifts so that we would be able to serve one another. In fact, that's how we act as good stewards. That's what the verse says. As each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. So do you want to be a good steward of the gifts God has given you? Well, then what you need to do is to use your gifts to serve other Christians in the church. It's so amazing that God has given us different gifts. That's, I think, what this verse is saying, is that it's the grace of God that he's given the church, different people in each church, different abilities so that they can serve. The Bible uses an image to talk about this. It uses the image of the human body. And it's kind of like this idea that a human body has different parts: eyes, ears, nose, hands, feet. And it has different parts, and yet the idea is that each part is there for the benefit or the health of the whole. That's kind of the idea of what's going on with these spiritual gifts. God has given the church, different people in the church, different gifts and abilities for the good and the benefit of the whole. Listen to what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12. He says, "For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot says, 'Because I'm not a hand, I'm not part of the body,' it is not for this reason any less a part of the body. And if the ear says, 'Because I'm not an eye, I'm not a part of the body,' it is not for this reason any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body just as he desired. If they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, 'I have no need of you,' or again the head to the feet, 'I have no need of you.'" You know, there's no place for us to look at other Christians around us in the world, and specifically in our local church, and say, you know what, I'm basically just good on my own. I don't really need other Christians in my life, and, I don't know that I really have anything to offer the other Christians around me. Maybe I'll attend a service on Sunday morning every once in a while, but serving, I don't know that we need that. Boy, to think that is really to miss the point. God has given each of us different gifts, and we can't go around saying, I don't need the rest of the body, and the rest of the body doesn't need me. No, it's God's design that we would live in community with one another as Christians, and that we would do this beautiful thing of serving each other. It's God's design. Did you see that in verse 18? This is such a beautiful verse. It says, but now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body, just as he desired. Can you think about that? Think about how amazing that is. God has placed you, each one of you, in a specific way in the body, just the way that he desired. I think of it like this. God has designed LBC just the way he desired, so that we would have the unique mix of gifts and abilities to do the mission that God has given us here in Lamar's. It's so important to realize that God has given us gifts so that we would serve one another. That's God's design for the church. There's kind of a stigma, though, about being a servant. I mean, who wants to be the servant? Everyone wants to be the one who is being served. We want to be at the top of the food chain, not at the bottom. But it really takes humility to serve other people, kind of like the humility that Jesus had. Jesus, who set the example for us by humbling himself, with his disciples getting on his knees and cleaning their feet. And if we want to imitate Jesus as a church, man, it's so important that we follow his example and serve one another. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.